Is this some kind of joke? The voice, slick with corporate polish and disdain, cut through the dry desert air. Mr. Sterling, the regional vice president for a cutting-edge defense contractor, adjusted his sunglasses and stared down his nose at the man standing before the registration table. The man was of average height with the kind of sun-weathered skin and quiet eyes that made him fade into a crowd. He wore faded jeans, a plain gray t-shirt that had seen better decades, and a pair of worn-out work boots. His entry for the exhibition shoot was a rifle case that looked less like a precision instrument container and more like something you'd find at a garage sale. Sterling let out a short, humorless laugh. "Sir, this is a Centurion Dynamics Long-Range Invitational. These are $50,000 rifle systems. We're not plinking cans here." He gestured vaguely at the firing line, where a half-dozen shooters in professional jerseys covered in logos lay prone behind rifles that looked like they belonged on a spaceship. Each one was a symphony of carbon fiber, advanced polymers, and optics the size of small telescopes. The man didn't react, his expression unreadable. He simply looked at Sterling with a patience that seemed to absorb the insult without a ripple. His son, a boy of about 10 with his father's serious eyes, tugged on his sleeve. "Dad, just show them." The man put a calming hand on his son's shoulder. "It's all right, Leo." He turned his attention back to Sterling, his voice low and even, the kind of voice that didn't carry far but demanded you lean in to listen. "I saw the sign. Open registration for the drone challenge. I paid the entry fee." He slid the receipt across the table. Standing beside Sterling was Jensen, the golden boy of the Centurion shooting team. He was young, fit, with a jawline that seemed engineered for magazine covers and an ego to match. He sauntered over, chewing gum with an audible smack. He glanced at the man's rifle case, then at the man himself, and a smirk played on his lips. "Hey, Pops, you get lost on your way to the bingo hall? That thing you're carrying, is it a musket?" His teammates snickered. The crowd, a mix of industry insiders, military personnel, and enthusiasts, shifted uncomfortably. Some laughed along, others looked away. It was a public dressing down, a deliberate act of exclusion. The man, Cade, just stood there, his hand still on his son's shoulder, a silent anchor in a sea of arrogance. He wasn't embarrassed. He wasn't angry. He was something else entirely. He was waiting. From the shade of a nearby canopy, a man named Marcus watched the entire exchange. He was older, with a barrel chest and a Marine Corps gunny haircut that had survived 20 years of retirement. He'd come to watch the new technology to see what the next generation was up to. But now, his attention was fixed on the quiet man in the gray t-shirt. Marcus didn't see a lost old man. He saw things the others missed. He saw the man's posture, relaxed but perfectly balanced, his weight centered. He saw the economy of motion, not a single wasted gesture. When the man had placed his hand on his son's shoulder, Marcus saw the back of his forearm. For a split second, the sleeve of the t-shirt rode up, revealing a splash of faded ink just above the wrist. It was blurred by sun and time, but Marcus's blood ran cold. He knew that shape. It was the tail and talons of a trident partially obscured, a ghost of a symbol that only a select few would ever recognize. Marcus leaned forward in his chair, his heart thumping a slow, heavy rhythm. He watched the way the man's eyes scanned the range, not just looking at the targets, but reading the wind, noting the heat shimmer rising from the ground, calculating variables with an instinct that couldn't be taught. The young hotshots had their kestrels and their ballistic apps. This man had his eyes and a lifetime of experience written in the lines around them. Jensen continued his performance, playing to the crowd. "Look, I get it. You were probably a decent shot back in your day. Vietnam, right? But things have changed. We're engaging a moving target at over 1,500 meters. It's a sub-MOA drone, custom-built to be agile. It's about algorithms and advanced ballistics, not just Kentucky windage." He said the last two words with mocking air quotes. Cade's gaze flickered to Jensen, and for a moment the quiet patience was replaced by something ancient and hard, like granite beneath soil. But it was gone as quickly as it came. He turned to the range master, a former Army ranger who looked deeply uncomfortable with the spectacle. "Am I cleared to take my turn?" The range master, ignoring Sterling's furious glare, nodded curtly. "Your fee is paid. Lane 7 is open. You're up." The crowd murmured as Cade and his son walked toward the firing line. The laughter had mostly died, replaced by a kind of morbid curiosity. They were all there to see the best of the best. And so far, the best had failed. The drone, a nimble black wasp of a machine, had danced and weaved through the sky all afternoon, untouched. A dozen shooters, including the vaunted Jensen, had sent round after round downrange their $50,000 rifles, barking impressively, only to have the digital display flash a red miss every single time. The wind was a devil today, swirling and unpredictable in the canyons. Cade knelt down and unlatched his case. The crowd leaned in, expecting to see some dusty, forgotten hunting rifle. What lay inside was something else. It was an M40A3, the legendary rifle of the Marine Corps Scout snipers. But this one was different. It was worn in ways that spoke of a hard life. The stock was scarred and nicked, the metal of the barrel worn to a dull gray sheen in places. There was no fancy chassis, no high-tech gadgets clamped to it, but it was immaculate. Gunny Marcus's breath caught in his throat. He knew that rifle. Not this specific one, but its soul. It was a tool, not a toy. Every scratch told a story. The stock wasn't polymer. It was a Macmillan A4, its fiberglass surface worn smooth where a cheek had rested for thousands of hours. The optic wasn't the latest digital marvel, but a Schmidt & Bender scope, its knobs showing the brass beneath the black anodizing from constant, precise adjustments. This wasn't a relic. This was an instrument, and the man handling it was a virtuoso. Cade didn't use a fancy rest. He simply unrolled a small, worn shooting mat and attached the rifle's bipod. He pulled a single round from a simple leather pouch. It wasn't some factory-loaded match ammo. It was a hand load. The brass polished, but not shiny. The bullet seated with an artisan's care. Leo stood beside his father, his face a mixture of pride and anxiety. "You got this, Dad." Cade gave him a small, confident smile. "We'll see, buddy. Just watch the wind." He lay prone, the rifle settling into his shoulder as if it were a part of his own body. There was no fidgeting, no last-minute adjustments. He became utterly still. His breathing slowed, each inhale and exhale a measured, controlled process. Jensen watched from behind, arms crossed, a smug look on his face. "This is going to be hilarious," he muttered to his teammate. "One shot. What a joke." The rangemaster's voice boomed over the loudspeaker. "Shooter on lane 7 is hot. Drone is launching." The small black machine whirred to life and shot into the sky, beginning its erratic, pre-programmed dance. It zipped left, then right, then climbed suddenly before dropping. It was designed to mimic an intelligent, evasive target. The other shooters had fired multiple rounds, trying to walk their shots onto the target to predict its next move. Cade did nothing. He just watched it through his scope, his finger resting lightly beside the trigger guard. He was waiting for a moment that only he could see, a confluence of wind, speed, and trajectory, a window that might last for less than a second. In his mind, the desert range faded away. The heat, the crowd, the mockery, it all dissolved. He was back in the Hindu Kush Mountains, the air thin and bitingly cold. He was looking down at a valley, his partner beside him. A high-value target was making a run for it, moving between rocky outcrops. The wind was a treacherous beast, whipping down from the peaks in unpredictable gusts. He had one chance, one shot. Failure meant the target would escape, and months of intelligence work would be for nothing. He remembered the feel of the cold trigger on his fingertip, the burn of the frigid air in his lungs. He remembered taking that half breath, feeling his heartbeat slow to a crawl, and the universe narrowing to the space between his eye and the crosshairs. He saw the target pause for a fraction of a second in a gap between two boulders, and in that moment he had sent the round on its way. The memory was as vivid as the present moment. A ghost of pressure on his shoulder, a ghost of a report echoing in his ears. That muscle memory, forged in the crucible of real-world consequence, was what guided him now. The drone on the range was just a shadow of that moment, a simple problem of physics to be solved. He saw it. The drone made a sharp right turn, and for an instant its trajectory flattened out as it fought a crosswind. The window was open. Cade's finger moved to the trigger. He exhaled, his body becoming as still as the rocks around him. The world seemed to go silent. There was only the sight picture in his scope, the fine lines of the reticle perfectly steady on a point just ahead of the darting drone. He didn't think. He didn't calculate. He knew. He applied pressure, a smooth, steady squeeze, and the old rifle pushed back against his shoulder with a familiar, authoritative crack. The sound was different from the high-pitched reports of the other rifles. It was a deeper, more resonant boom that spoke of power and purpose. The single round left the barrel, a tiny copper-jacketed messenger of physics spinning at thousands of revolutions per second on its journey across the desert. For a long second, nothing happened. The drone continued its flight path. Jensen started to snicker. "See? What a waste of—" His words died in his throat. A tiny, almost invisible vapor trail appeared for a split second behind the drone, and then the machine simply ceased to exist. It didn't just fall. It disintegrated into a cloud of black plastic and electronic confetti. There was no loud explosion, just a distant, final tink as the 175-grain bullet passed through its core, followed by silence. The range was utterly quiet. No one breathed. The digital display, which had flashed red all day, now glowed with a single, triumphant green word. Hit. Cade didn't celebrate. He worked the bolt on his rifle with fluid, practiced efficiency, ejecting the spent brass casing. Before it could touch the dusty ground, he plucked it out of the air and slipped it into his pocket. He then calmly began to pack his rifle away, his movements deliberate and unhurried. His son, Leo, let out a whoop of joy and threw his arms around his father's neck. "You did it! I knew you could do it!" Cade hugged him back, a genuine smile finally gracing his lips. The crowd erupted into a spontaneous, thunderous applause. Sterling's jaw was slack, his face a mask of disbelief. Jensen and his team just stared, their expensive equipment suddenly looking like overpriced toys. They hadn't just been beaten. They had been shown a level of mastery they didn't even know existed. As the applause began to die down, the sound of tires crunching on gravel filled the air. A black SUV with government plates pulled up near the staging area, and a man in a crisp Navy service dress uniform stepped out. He was a captain, his chest a rainbow of service ribbons, his bearing radiating an effortless command. He scanned the crowd, his eyes skipping over the corporate suits and the flashy young shooters until they landed on the man in the gray t-shirt. The captain's stern expression softened immediately. He walked directly toward Cade, his path cutting through the stunned crowd like a ship through water. He ignored Sterling, who tried to intercept him with a sycophantic greeting. He walked right past Jensen as if he were invisible. He stopped directly in front of Cade and Leo. He didn't offer a handshake. Instead, he snapped to a rigid position of attention, his back ramrod straight, and rendered a salute so sharp, so precise, it seemed to vibrate with unspoken history and immense respect. "Master Chief." The captain's voice was clear and formal, ringing across the now silent range. "I had no idea you were stateside. It's an honor, sir." The title hung in the air, a bombshell of a revelation. Master Chief, the highest enlisted rank, a title earned through decades of unparalleled leadership and expertise. Gunny Marcus, from his spot under the canopy, slowly got to his feet and rendered his own salute. He had been right. Sterling's face went from pale to ashen. Jensen looked like he was going to be physically ill. The captain lowered his salute and turned to the bewildered Mr. Sterling. "This man, whom your shooter so eloquently called Pops, is Master Chief Petty Officer Cade Harrison, formerly of the Naval Special Warfare Development Group. You might know them by their old name, SEAL Team 6. The name dropped like a 10-ton weight. "The drone your company is so proud of?" the captain continued, his voice now laced with ice. "Master Chief Harrison was the one who wrote the operational requirements for the counter-UAV program. He's forgotten more about long-range marksmanship than your entire team will ever know. He's the reason that thing is so hard to hit. He designed the test." The finality of the statement was devastating. The arrogant young men hadn't been competing against some old-timer. They had been judged by the very standard he had created, and they had been found wanting. Cade, looking profoundly uncomfortable with the attention, gave the captain a slight nod. "Just enjoying a day off with my son, Captain?" The captain's expression softened again as he looked at Leo, who was staring up at his father with an expression of pure awe. He understood. This wasn't about showing off. It was about a father showing his son what he was capable of. The captain turned his icy gaze back to Sterling. "The prize for this challenge is a $25,000 check, I believe. You'll be making it out to the Navy SEAL Foundation. I'm sure Master Chief Harrison would agree." Cade simply nodded, already closing his rifle case. He had no interest in the money or the fame. He had what he came for. He slung the worn case over his shoulder, put his arm around Leo, and started to walk away. As he passed the canopy, he caught Gunny Marcus's eye. He gave the old Marine a short, almost imperceptible nod, a silent acknowledgement that passed between two men who understood the true cost of the skills on display. Marcus nodded back, a deep and abiding respect in his eyes. They walked toward their dusty pickup truck, a father and son, leaving behind a field of humbled egos, a lesson in humility that would never be forgotten, and the quiet, enduring truth that the most dangerous men are the ones you never see coming.